Okay, we're recording again. Um, Sorry about that, folks. We had a electrical blowout here, so that's why you lost me at that point. I was about 3/4 through, but luckily I was able to, or somehow it's salvaged. So this is going to be the second part of the finisher upper, right? So again, apologize for that, but it's, out of my control. So let me go back to share screen. Okay. Hopefully this doesn't shoot me back. Okay, it did, but I can get us there. Okay, let me minimize myself again here. There we go. I'll get us back. Okay, so this is where I was, where we were together. I was describing this map here about the Aztecs in central Mexico, the Mayans at the tip of Mexico and going on into Central America, and then what we'll be getting into very soon, which would be the Incan people from what is now Peru, and they went down through Chile and close to what is now Argentina. So, and for Wani and Lishan, this is 191. So I think I just did the map and I didn't go through the reading. So if I do the reading and if it is twice, it's okay. I want to make sure I don't want anything left out for you guys. So I'm going to read this on 191. The lives of the ruling elites revolved around conquest and continual warfare. So there you go. The leaders, royalty, they were endlessly conquering other people and trying to expand the empire. So that means continual warfare with other tribes of people. So this militarism that said they carried militarism and human sacrifice to unprecedented extremes. So the more they became militaristic, the more they wanted conquest, the more people that they sacrificed to the gods. War shaped the state religion and imposed or put on a social structure that was unique in America. The chief war god was also god of the sun at noon, provider of warmth for the growing crop. So again, they have to make the sun happy, so the sun will give enough light to grow their crops and people can eat and survive. The Aztecs believed that this god survived on human blood. There's the sacrifices, unfortunately. Preferably the warm hearts, like I mentioned earlier, of brave captive warriors, which were ripped out on altars in the middle of their great city. At the height of Aztec dominance, priests vastly increased the number of victims for each major ceremony, and ritual cannibalism also increased. They don't have a lot of facts on that. I mean, straight facts that they can really say. They just say, well, we think they started, eating these dead folks. But I don't put it past when people are cutting out hearts of other folks. But I don't know if it was on such a great scale. But what have you, it did happen. Okay. The most widely accepted practical explanation for this scale of mass slaughter is that the Aztec elite tried to prevent rebellions by terrorizing the population into submission. And that is a common theme throughout history all over the world. We're talking about the 1400s here. So I'll give you something more recent, like that. When people in Nazi Germany started to feel uncomfortable with Hitler and knew that they were not going on a good course for their country, they started rebelling. Okay. So what did Hitler do? He started executing even his generals, his high generals, and made sure that everybody saw this. And like they said for the Aztecs, what this hopefully does, it scares the people into submission. They're like, hell, why am I going to rebel if they're going to hang me? Or in the Aztecs case, they're going to take me on top of the pyramid and cut my heart out while I'm alive. So these kind of terror tactics have been done throughout the world. And I guess in some areas here in the world where you have violent, what have you, these are still done to scare people into submission. Okay, the Aztecs were thus a sort of super Assyrians. So Assyrians did the same thing, and you're talking about in the early Middle East, ruling their unfortunate neighbors by fear and random raids. These vengeful subjects readily allied themselves with the Spanish conquerors to topple the hated Aztecs in the early 1500s. So what they're saying there is that, you know, you terrorize these people and kill their families and do these things, and these people will hate you. And when the Spanish came and they were on low numbers, even though they had more advanced weaponry like bullets and I guess some cannons, horses, and then metalwork to protect themselves with, they easily got friends with these other tribes, many different tribes that said, hey, you guys can help us kill these Aztecs. You know, the only bad thing about that is, unfortunately, they were foolish on the aspect that the Spanish needed their help. The Spanish used these other tribes. And then after they defeated the Aztecs, the Spanish made these fellows slaves also because they were Indian. So they killed them or made them slaves too. So nothing really improved for these folks, right? So how was the Aztecs militaristic society organized? We know a good deal about the Aztec state. Again, thanks. I mean, remember I said the Spanish burned most of the records. Thanks to its pictographic records or codices, there was a few that survived. The Spanish preserved some of these records so they could learn more about their new subjects and control them more efficiently. So here, look at that. They didn't want these books or codices to learn about the Aztecs and if there was good points or bad points. They wanted to learn what are the weak points of the Aztecs so that they can control them more efficiently. But I guess they didn't think about that until they destroyed the libraries. The emperor, who acquired semi-divine status, which means he was almost like a god, was elected by the male members of the ruling family. At the top of the social hierarchy were the emperor's officials, ex-warriors of distinction. So these are old warriors that I guess defeated many opponents in war, and now they had respect. And they governed like feudal lords in Europe in the provinces conquered by the Aztec army. So I guess it's like saying, you know, again, I use these broad, silly examples, but they're very clear, right? So let's say the Aztec capital was in downtown LA and, you know, they conquered Monterey Park and K-Town and Hollywood. So once they conquered these states, whoever the best soldier was, then that person would be in charge of K-Town or Hollywood or Monterey Park. So that's what they're saying here. The Aztecs also had a large and powerful group of priests, the highest of whom served as advisors to the emperor in his palace. So they lived in his palace and they were his ultimate advisors. I hope they were telling him the truth, right? Okay, folks, that brings us to the bottom of 191. Like I said, I already gave you the questions for 190, but again, I can only go over this stopped. So I'll just, before we go, I'll let you know. 7, question 7 was Teotihuacan has been described as perhaps what? So you, again, you're going to tell me the significance of itself just being a city. It was a first of something, okay? And then describe the Aztecs' beginnings. So where did they come from and what kind of people were they, right? Later they were rulers, but in the beginning, they were kind of different folks, okay? So again, at the bottom of 191, let me go to the questions. Okay. Whiteboard. Are we there, whiteboard? Pencil time? And guess what? I'm going to be kind. Only going to give one question on 191. Yay. Question 9. So 9 is, what did the Aztec elites dedicate their lives to? So what were their main purposes? Let me see if I can stretch this. Remember, it was mentioned they had a couple of purposes, right? So just say what they were. Okay, I made a one-liner there. So again, what did the Aztec elites dedicate their lives to? So let me give you a bit to answer that. Okay, I think you got that. All right, I'll go for the eraser. All right, again, repeating, what did the Aztec elites dedicate their lives to? There was 2 major things that they emphasized the life was about, okay? So that's gone. We return to the material. Okay. So again, we ended down here, the emperor in his place, and that is the bottom of 191. So we're gonna skip 192. It had like a lot of stories, which I don't think we needed to get into. We need to get into the exact facts of the history, not learn different, stories. Or the Aztecs had so many gods, we don't need to know all their gods. They even had a god for alcohol. Okay, but we can go through this. This is on top of the page. So actually, this is top of 193. Okay, all right. Images of history. Lord knows, Aztec merchant god. Merchant, it's buying and selling. Lord knows, the patron god of merchants. Okay, here he is, upper left. And one of his devotees, a traveling merchant, upper right, appear with their symbolic items. This divinatory, which means, like a highly religious manuscript from the Aztec era, may chronicle specifically the lore or the story and beliefs of the merchant class. Known as the Fedjervadi Mayer Codex, the deerskin, so this is written on deerskin, not paper. Manuscript is in the Liverpool Public Museum. So here we go, the calendar glyph of the serpent god, plumed means a lot of flowers. Lord knows, so I guess he had a big nose. Rituals of gift exchange. The name gives you, it's very, very complicated. Traveling merchant, carrying a cargo of quetzal birds from the tropics. So again, their feathers were very expensive and of high value. Staff and fan, symbols of the merchant guild. Day symbols, left to right, a flint, earthquake, vulture, eagle. So all these things had meaning. Okay, now we finally get into the Inca Empire. Yay! So we've gone through the middle of Mexico, lower part of Mexico, Central America. Now we're in South America, covering the whole, continent. Okay. The Inca Empire, another major Amerindian civilization, existed far to the south of Mexico, almost certainly remaining in ignorance of the Aztec realm and kingdom and its accomplishments. In the Andes Mountains of modern Peru, an extraordinarily talented people, the Inca, had recently constructed a militaristic empire as the Aztecs had done in Mexico. Again, same kind of things done all over the world. The Inca Empire was the culmination or the ending point of many centuries of developments in agriculture, commerce, religion, architecture, and government. After the fall of Chavín de Huántar, several wealthy regional states had emerged in the Andes. For example, in the north, the Moche state controlled many river valleys for 8 centuries. Wow, 800 years, until a series of natural disasters destroyed their irrigation systems and cities. Moche artisans were expert metallurgists, so they were experts at dealing with metal, and they made unusually realistic poetry. This is a photo. We will see a photo shortly. They built elaborate ceremonial centers. Meanwhile, at the southern center of Andean civilization, another great state arose near Lake Titicaca, which is, I think, the highest lake in the world. It's up on top of the mountain area, endured for centuries and also collapsed. Only the Inca achieved unification of the entire Andean era, from north to south, and from the Pacific coast to the Amazon basin. The Incan began as one of many competing groups in the southern Andes near Lake Titicaca. Like the Aztecs, the Inca rose from humble beginnings to conquer the entire Andean region. So again, you've got these other Indian folks, and you don't even hear about them now, but they were defeated, just like the Aztecs were strong and defeated the other groups in Mexico. It says the title Inca really refers to the ruler of this empire, but it is also commonly used to refer to the tribal group that ruled the surrounding peoples and to the empire they created. Centered on the town of Cusco in one of the high valleys that penetrate the massive wall of the Andes, the Inca started bringing their immediate neighbors under their rule in the 1200s, again, conquering these people and saying, we're going to tell you what to do. By the mid-1400s, they had created a state that rested on the obligatory labor of the conquered peoples. So again, all the things built were done by slave labor of these folks that they defeated. Sad. And it says here, the conquered people thought to have numbered as many as 8 million people that they conquered of all these different tribes that were in the Andean era or area. It says if this number, see, that's why we can never be exactly sure, 100% accurate on these things. We have to do what is called guesstimates, rough guesses, be in the ballpark, as they say. If this number is accurate, the Inca, like the Aztecs, ruled over more people than any European state at the time. So when they talk about these, strong empires in Europe and this country in Europe and that country, hey, these people that weren't mentioned in the South America and, Mexico, they actually ruled over more people than the Europeans did. Wow. The Inca practice of labor allotment, perhaps adopted from one of the conquered groups, provided room and board for the workers in exchange for their mandatory labor tribute. So again, this was something they probably adopted from one of the tribes they defeated. Basically, it just says, hey, you're going to work like a slave, but we'll give you free room and board. So we'll feed you and give you a place to sleep. But again, what the hell is that if you're a slave, right? Okay, so that brings me to the bottom of 193. Like I said, I skipped 192 because it was just basically a story about one God. So there's too many gods to learn about. So we have to learn about the overall history. That's what's more important. So I'm at the bottom of 193 and I have one or two questions. Am I going to be kind again? What am I going to do on the whiteboard? Temujin, what should I do? Get the pencil first. Guess what? Only one question. Yay. Okay, that would be question 10. Okay, might be a long one. Easy one though. So I'm giving you a long one, which means I have to do the work. But you're going to have an easy answer. Nice and short. Not fair. Okay, there you go, mosey posey. Which Amerindian civilization, far south from Mexico, established similar empire like the Aztecs? Okay, we stretch this. There's no way I'll get this on one line, but could I possibly do two? No, I'll leave it like that. So again, which Amerindian civilization far south from Mexico established similar empire like the Aztecs? I'll give you a minute on that, but you got the short end there, baby, not me. I got the long one. Okay, that should be done. That's only, a one worder there, so I won't even repeat it. Eraser. Let's go. Okay. Back to the material. Now again, we ended down here, mandatory labor tribute, which would be the bottom of 193. And as I turn it over, okay, first off, there's that realistic pottery. That's actually a man's face, a real man's face. If he has any descendants, you could probably meet a guy that looks like that. That's how great their pottery was. So that's 194. Okay. And we're ending at the bottom here. So let me see what happens. Okay, so let me go through the picture first. The Moche portrait head vessel, 400 to 1600 CE. The Moche noble portrayed here wears a distinctive cap and ear ornaments of his rank. So this shows you where his status is in society. With exquisite realism, moche artisans in clay chronicled individuals, animals, foodstuffs, and human activities. Okay. All right. Into the material. The critical breakthrough to empire rather than merely regional dominance. The thing there is that regional is just your local areas you're in control. But if you become an empire, it extends really, really far, way past your own home areas. And this came with the rule of Pachacuti Inca in the 1450s. He adopted the practice of split inheritance, meaning that each deceased supreme Inca in mummified form as a mummy kept all his lands. Henceforth, thus, so, each new emperor had to conquer new territories in order to validate his own authority. So look at that. Whoever conquered something and then died, their mummy, they controlled it. So you didn't inherit it. You, as a new young guy, you had to go out and conquer more. Pachacuti Inca created an elaborate new cult to an ancient sun deity or sun god, elevating him above other nature gods. The Inca rulers claimed direct descendants from the sun. So they said, we came from the sun. A convincing way to maintain control. 80 years before the Spaniards came, the original petty kingdom had expanded to boundaries that reach into present day, as I said, Argentina and the south, and what today is Ecuador to the north. Like the Aztecs, their success and conquest kept the Incas under constant pressure, same issue as the Aztecs, to keep a large number of subjects under strict control. The Incas excelled at organization and administration. Taxes were collected by an efficient administrative system. After conquering a new era or area, the Inca often deported the inhabitants, moving them from one native region to an alien place where they would be entirely dependent on Cusco's protection from resentful neighbors. A practice that is reminiscent of Assyrian and early Roman techniques of rule. So again, let's say you're born and raised in Hollywood, like I'm using the same areas for conquest, and it gets conquered by the Incan people. Well, they don't leave you there and make you slaves. They move you to Texas. And the people that already live in Texas don't like it that you're there. So there's a constant pressure between two different groups. So I don't know why this technique was done, but the Assyrians and the early Romans did the same thing. Another strategy was to build up the old ayllu and replace them with new ones based on the place of residence rather than common kinship or relatives. The head of the new ayllu was appointed by the emperor because of good service or demonstrated loyalty. So this is where they split and said, well, this high position is due to duty, not bloodlines. He served the central government in about the same fashion as the feudal barons served the king of France. The ordinary people organized in these new artificial clans were his to do with as he liked. So, hey, if he wanted to kill you, make you a slave, do whatever, it's up to him. Okay. All right. So this is actually the last page of our reading, and then I will have a question or two for you, and that's it. So as long as they discharged their labor duty and paid any tax demanded of them by the Cusco government, the Inca also established colonies among their subjects. The colonists helped encourage the conquered people to transfer their loyalty to their new masters and ensured that a military force would be available if needed to suppress a rebellion. So again, waiting for them to rebel, they had a military force waiting. Regimentation and enforced conformity were prominent features of Incan government, but it also displayed a concern for social welfare that was unusual for early governments. In times of poor harvest, grain was distributed to the people from the government's enforced collection granaries as in China. So If the weather was bad and they couldn't make enough grain and what have you, instead of having people die, they brought in the extra surplus that was kept for the kings in the major city. Natural disasters such as flooding, mountain rivers were common, and a system of central relief funds provided assistance for the areas affected. So that's kind of like what we have in the States that is called FEMA. So you're living in K-Town and a flood hits and it wipes out everything. And the government says, hey, we're going to send FEMA over there. What is that? Federal Mudra, I forget. And then we'll help you get back on your feet. The central authorities also enforced the sort of pension system that provided for the destitute and the old. So there was a system set up for old folks and people that, I don't know, couldn't work anymore, what have you. So I guess they just weren't killed and thrown away. These features of the Incan regime have attracted much attention from modern historians who see them in them a tentative approach to the welfare state of the 20th century. So kind of like the welfare, what's going on now in the States. The Incas' cultural impact on their subjects is evident from the linguistic changes that occurred. Along the west coast of the Incas, Quechua, now the official language of modern Peru, along with Spanish, supplanted the variety of unwritten languages that had previously existed among the South American Indians. So again, the peoples that did not have writing and reading, the Incans did, and look where it put the language in modern day. Unlike the Mesoamericans, however, the Inca did not develop a written language. Oh, that's not good. They continued to rely on different types of quipus for keeping numerical records and as a means of controlling their empire. The Inca probably also used certain quipus as memory devices for reciting oral traditions. The Inca built on previous feats of engineering to become superb road builders and architects. The greatest road network in the hemisphere unified the empire from north to south, both along the coast and in the mountains. As their predecessors had done, the Inca constructed irrigation systems, dams and canals, and built terraces on the steep hillside so crops could be planted on every square inch of soil. The stone buildings of Royal Cusco, cut and fitted perfectly without mortar, are among the finest erected in the Americas. One of the most magnificent achievements of the Incan rule was Machu Picchu, a city in the clouds of the high Andes whose ruins were discovered as recently as 1911. The Inca accomplished the awe-inspiring feat of moving thousands of massive stones to build the walls of this fortress city on a mountaintop, in the absence of almost all technology, probably even without the wheel. How was that possible? And what's the answer? No one knows why the city was built or why it was abandoned. Like most other ancient and pre-modern societies, Incan society exhibited sharp class divisions. A small elite of nobles was at the top, under the divine king, the Inca, from all whom authority issued. A large army maintained obedience, again, like I mentioned, Nazi Germany or the Aztecs. Most rebellions against the Inca were in fact fraternal wars, which means brother wars, in which the rebel leader was a member of the imperial house. So infighting, as they say. The Spaniards under Francisco Pizarro used one of these civil wars to great advantage when they arrived in 1533 to steal the gold of Cusco. So kind of like the Aztecs were defeated because the Spanish used all these different tribes that hated them and were constantly under attack by the Aztecs. This family war, this brother war of things, made them not united. And the Spanish used one side to destroy the other, steal the gold, and then the people that helped them, they made them slaves too. Okay, so now for the final questions. Pencil. Okay. Question 11. me see if I can stretch this. Stretchy poo. Let's go. Oh, it's not stretching. Does it want to stretch? There we go. The Incan success and conquest kept them busy with what? So hey, you defeated all these people, but now you have some kind of a problem. What was it? And now for the last question of the day. A little stretchy poo. Describe one of the most significant achievements of Inca rule. This is well stated here, okay? Something very, very obvious. So let me give you a minute to do those, and then we'll be done for the day. Okay, you got that? All right, good deal. Let me go for the eraser. Repeating. The Incan success and conquest kept them busy with what? So you're successful, you subjugate these people, but now you have a new problem you didn't have before. 12, describe one of the most magnificent achievements of Inca rule. It has stayed famous for them till this day, present, 2021. All right, so we're done with the reading. We're done with the questions. Again, sorry for the power out at about 3/4 of the way through, but now we've covered the last quarter, so we are done, okay? So I will see you next week. Please take care, everybody. Thank you.